Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Bava Metzia, pages 102 through 108. Kuf Bet through Kuf Chet. 102. Hamaskir bayit l'chavero l'shana. Well, you lease out your home to your fellow for a year. Nit abra hashana. And what happens? They intercalated the year, that a 12-month year now became a 13-month year with an Adar Sheni. Nit abra la socher. The advantage goes to the tenant, the renter, because the deal was for a year, and the year happens to now be longer. So we abide by the terms of the deal, and the renter has an advantage. However, hiskir lo lachadashim. If the arrangement was such that you're paying on a month-to-month basis, it was a monthly deal. It might extend for a long period of time, but the deal was chodashim. Then nit abra hashana. If the year was intercalated so that there's a 13th month, nit abra lamaskir. The advantage goes to the landlord. And now a rent payment must be made for the extra 13th month. So it all depends upon the precise language of the rental agreement. 103. Hamakabel sadeh mechavero. If you receive a field, agricultural field from your fellow, to work it, Makom shenahagu liktzor yiktzor. In the place where the custom was that in harvesting you cut with the sickle, then you should cut. La'akor ya'akor. In the place, in the locale where the custom was to physically uproot the plant from the soil, you'll uproot it. Lacharosh acharav. The place where the custom was to plow the field after the act of harvesting, you should do that activity as well. Hakol keminhaga medina. Everything should follow the local practice, that your behavior on the field should be consistent with what is expected, and not to depart and do some other method, even if that method may be seen as kosher a few towns away. 104. Hamekabel sadeh mechavero. If you receive a field from your fellow to work it, v'hovira, and you didn't work it, you let the land lie fallow in the time of your rental agreement, or if you were a sharecropper. Shaminota kama ru'ya la'asot v'noten lo. We have to take an estimate of how much the field was supposed to have yielded had you been working it appropriately. And however much that is, you pay it to the landlord because he was expecting to receive payment. Shekach kotev lo, because this is what is written in the deal, and even if it's not written in the deal, it is assumed, it is taken for granted by the law that it is in the deal. Im ovir, if I let the land lie fallow, velo avir, and I don't work it, I will pay according to the best, meaning to the best yield this field would have had. Okay, so this arrangement becomes necessary in one of two, but not both of the following scenarios. In the case of an aris who is paying a percentage of the yield to the landlord, then we have to have this arrangement. The landlord has to be protected. In the case of a choker, where it's a specific amount of produce is going to be given to the landlord, regardless of the yield of the field, this becomes a moot point. You just follow the contract in that case. 105. You received a field from your fellow and it didn't produce. You have an arrangement. You were going to get a percentage of the crops, and the field is just not functional. It's not producing. If there is enough of a yield that you can make a heap of grain, then you the worker who have management responsibility over the field, need to attend to the state of the field. You can't completely ignore it as though it's got nothing. It doesn't have nothing. It has enough that it warrants your attention. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda said, well, that's a bad threshold to follow my kitzvah b'kri, because it's the same for a large field versus a small field, but it shouldn't. It should reflect the size of the field. Rather, if the yield of the field is enough that it produces sufficient seed to sow the seed for next agricultural cycle, then it's enough to warrant your attention. You have to keep focusing on it. You can't just ignore it. 106. If you received a field from your fellow in order for the sake of planting barley, you shall not plant wheat. However, if you took it for the sake of planting wheat, you can plant barley. Why? Because you can't tax the field's resources and nutrients more than was arranged for. And since barley is less taxing on the field than wheat, then if the arrangement was barley, you can't do wheat. However, if the arrangement was wheat, you could do barley because you could impose a lesser burden on the integrity of the field. Rashba goes here. However, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says you're not allowed to shift things. Whatever the arrangement was, that's what you have to do. Even if if you want to plant something which is less burdensome on the field and going to take away less nutrients, still not allowed to change what the arrangement was. 107. Baruch atah ba'ir says in the Torah, blessed will you be in the city. Which is interpreted to mean your house should be near the synagogue. However, there's another point of view that says we'd rather your house not be near the synagogue. I understand why you want it to be near the synagogue. It's convenient for purposes of getting to the synagogue services, and that's a blessing in the sense that you don't have to struggle and walk long distances in bad weather to get to the minyan. However, why would someone say that it's better if you live further away? The answer is schar halicha. You get credit in Shamayim for every pace, for every psiyah that you have on your way to the house of worship. Baruch atah b'sadeh, blessed will you be in the field, shnechasecha krovim la'ir, that your properties, your agricultural fields should be nearby to the place of habitation. In other words, you shouldn't have a long commute to work. Nobody wants to sit on the highway in traffic forever, so to an antiquity, they didn't want to have to walk long distances to get to their fields. 108. Matana leitla mishum dina de bar mitzvah. This is a law of the bar mitzvah. The bar mitzvah law is simply this, that if you have an owner of a field and there's a neighbor who owns an adjacent field and somebody wants to sell, priority is given to the neighbor to buy the property that is for sale so that they can have now a larger contiguous property. And they have sort of right of first refusal rather than some random other person interested in buying the property who does not have any neighboring possessions. However, that's true only when it comes to sales. When it comes to a gift, we do not apply the rule of bar mitzvah because the potential recipient of the gift would lose if he simply says, okay, you can buy it instead. And when there's a hefsed, when there's a loss involved, we do not apply the bar mitzvah concept. Everyone have a great week.